Australia is the sixth largest country on Earth. It covers nearly 7.7 million square kilometers, and yet almost all of its 26 million people live within a thin coastal strip that makes up barely 10% of the land. The other 90% is effectively empty. This is not an accident. It is the result of geography, climate, geology, and history all working together. And once you understand the forces at play, it becomes clear that Australia's emptiness is not a failure of settlement. It is the logical outcome of the land itself. Start with water. Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth. The interior receives less than 250 millimeters of rainfall per year. In many areas, far less. For context, London receives about 600 millimeters. The Sahara Desert averages around 25 millimeters. Much of inland Australia sits between those two numbers, but without the cooling effect of altitude or the seasonal predictability that even arid regions elsewhere tend to have. The reason for this lies in Australia's position on the globe. It sits squarely across the subtropical high-pressure belt. Unlike Africa or South America at similar latitudes, Australia has no significant mountain range to force moisture inland from the coast. The Great Dividing Range along the east coast does the opposite. It blocks rain from reaching the interior. Water is only part of the story. The soil is the other half. Australia is one of the geologically oldest landmasses on the planet. It has not been glaciated, volcanically renewed, or tectonically refreshed in hundreds of millions of years. That matters enormously for agriculture because glaciers and volcanoes deposit fresh, mineral-rich material into the soil. Without that renewal, Australian soils have been leached by rain and sun for so long that they are among the most nutrient-poor on Earth. Then there is temperature. The interior of Australia routinely reaches 45 to 50 degrees Celsius in summer. Some recorded temperatures have exceeded 50 degrees. These are not survivable conditions without infrastructure, and building infrastructure across thousands of kilometers of empty desert to support a population that cannot grow its own food is not economically viable. The red color of the outback comes from iron oxide, essentially rust, which forms when iron-bearing minerals are oxidized over immense timescales. It is agriculturally almost useless. The coastal fringes are different. They have relatively better soils and reliable rainfall, which is precisely why that is where the people are. The few inland towns that exist are there for a specific reason: mining. Broken Hill, Kalgoorlie, Mount Isa, these are resource extraction centers. They exist because the geology of the interior, while terrible for farming, is extraordinarily rich in minerals: iron ore, gold, copper, uranium, opal. The towns service those industries. When the resources thin out, the towns tend to shrink. The southeastern and southwestern corners of Australia have a Mediterranean or temperate climate: warm summers, mild winters, seasonal rainfall. The soils are workable. The land can support agriculture. Ports connect the country to global trade. This is where British settlement concentrated from 1788 onward, and it is where the cities grew. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, all coastal, all within reach of viable farmland and natural harbors. Australia's emptiness is, at its core, a function of geology and climate operating over hundreds of millions of years. The land dried out. The soils lost their nutrients. The rainfall patterns locked in. By the time humans arrived, both indigenous Australians tens of thousands of years ago and European settlers 2 centuries ago, the continent had already determined where life was viable at scale: the coast, so that is where the people went and where they stayed. Governments have tried to push settlement inland. The founding of Canberra in 1913 as an inland capital was partly motivated by the desire to demonstrate that the interior could sustain a major city. It required decades of infrastructure investment and still depends entirely on imported water systems. After both World Wars, Australia ran soldier settlement schemes, giving returned veterans plots of inland land to farm. Many of these failed within a generation. The land simply could not support what was being asked of it. The Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme in the 1950s and 60s was an enormous engineering effort to redirect water inland from the mountains. It changed agriculture in the Murray-Darling Basin significantly, but the basin is still vulnerable, and it still represents a fraction of the total land area. The 90% that remains empty is not waiting to be filled. It is simply what the continent is, and has been for longer than most places on Earth have existed in their current form. So yeah, the next time you look at Australia, you'll know exactly why that massive center is blank. Drop this emoji in the comments if you made it this far, or don't. Catch you later.